Welcome, everybody. Appreciate you coming in for today's event. We had a lot of great registrations, a lot of great questions submitted for today's topic about kitchen ventilation. I'm Pat Plingo from Yale Appliance. With me today is our owner and CEO, Steve Sheinkopf, and Francesco Froio, our general manager. Steve's got a great presentation around all the details for your kitchen ventilation projects. And we have tons of questions to dive into after the presentation. We will be sharing this recording with the presentation after the event, so just keep that in mind. If you're going to be taking notes, you'll have the whole thing. And with all of that out of the way, I'll turn it over to Steve.
Thank you, Pat. Truth about kitchen ventilation and lighting. What everyone seems to get wrong. I know we don't sell lighting anymore, but we did for like 96 years. And I put a short section in there because people aren't lighting their kitchens properly and people aren't venting properly either. Anyway, let's talk about who does this right. Look at restaurants, and all of them, if you go look at restaurant pictures, vent properly. If you take a look at the one on the left, those little hoses are fire suppression systems. You don't see over-the-range microwaves. They're not trying to downdraft this, but they have hoods at the right height, at the right depth, and the right venting runs. And we'll talk about that in a little bit, but we go residentially. I go in a house to get all these pictures, and I see this. This is 120,000 BTUs with no ventilation, and this isn't just an isolated picture. And there's some ramifications to not venting properly we'll get into. But before I do, little audience participation. If you cooked today, what burner did you cook on? You can leave those comments, but if we take a look at a popular range, this is the Cafe series. This is the Cafe gas range and the matching over-the-range microwave. If we look again, these ranges, they don't have to be, this is not even a professional range. The front burner is 21,000, which is, I think, the front right, I would guess, that everybody cooked on this morning. It's 21,000. The left is 18,000. They're about 23 inches deep. The matching over-the-range microwave is 15 and a half inches. So it really doesn't capture the burner that you're cooking on, right? So if we play this out and cook some bacon on a skillet, right? You get that nice bacony aroma. What are you really getting on a gas range? You may think you're just getting nice bacony aroma, but you're also releasing grease and odor and all these. There's chemicals called VOCs, volatile organic compounds, that includes benzene and formaldehyde. This is what's released in the air: nitrogen oxide, dioxide, particulate matter, formaldehyde. That's what's going on. That's what you're creating on a gas burner. And what happens is, if you're renovating, it's not like the old days 50 years ago. Windows are better, building materials are better. So not only are you getting high output burners, but producing more of these potentially harmful compounds, this stuff stays in your house for a longer period of time. So those two are the combination that we want to avoid, right? And this is what the EPA says. It's interesting, the EPA doesn't regulate internal air off your stove, but if it did, they would say it's 2 to 5 times worse than outside, up to 100 times worse than being outside. Think about that. It's not just like, we've all been in houses where it smelled like the last thing they cooked, but it's a lot worse than that. And if we go back in time, when my mom redid her kitchen 50 some odd years ago, the old caloric, I don't remember her turning on a vent. It really didn't matter because the windows were drafty and the max burner was 8,000 BTUs. But today's burners, average stove is now 60,000 BTUs. This is the Blue Star. This is 80,000 BTU. This is just in the 30-inch range. We're not talking about 36, 48, or 60-inch ranges. So the average is now 60 versus 28 when my mom redid hers. Yet you see stuff like this. So we had a question on a 63-inch range. This is a 63-inch range with no ventilation over it. Or down venting. This is a Wolf 40-inch dual fuel with a grill in the middle. Now that grill is an infrared. Now for those of you that have Lynx outside grills with infrared, that's a 23,000 BTU infrared burner. You ever tried downdrafting that? The smoke that comes off this? Well, the Wolf, that's a 16,000 BTU infrared. So you're not down venting that properly. A downdraft can't handle a powerful BTU burner. And then you get something like this. When you put a stove in an island, you need a 3-inch overhang on either side to vent properly. Not to mention that's a glass hood that can't handle the stove anyway in terms of a CFM or a capture. And this is one of my favorites. This was actually the cover of the cafe website, G Cafe, which I happen to like. You get the colors, you get the handle styles. It's a beautiful product line. But the specs clearly say 30 to 36 over the cooking surface. That is not 30 to 36. Almost anytime you see a pot filler, people seem to need to put the hood way past what they should. And when you do that, the smoke will dissipate before it hits the hood, some of it. So you want to properly mount the vent over the stovetop as well. And lastly, my mom, who went around me to buy her stuff. Once again, 23 inches is a 20,000, 18 and an 18,000 on the front burners on the Wolf, and the meal hood's only 20 inches, 21 inches deep. So, but at least she'll be able to vent that teapot. So those are the issues that you see out there, and there's so many so many examples that I could have provided for you. But those are the main ones. And then you've got the custom ones like this. Let's hope that the person just cooks on that pot over that hood. I just thought that was entertaining. I know none of you are probably doing something like that, or I hope you won't. So if that's the things you're doing wrong, let's do it right. And they're just 4 basics of venting that you have to remember. The first one's pretty easy. It's CFM. It's the motor, right? Really, the average hood starts at 300 to 400 and goes up to 1,500 CFM. That's the amount of air that goes through that hood per minute. So a 1,500 CFM exhaust, which is really the outside exhaust, that is like the equivalent of exhausting a small room of air out of your house per minute. So we need to make that up, and we'll talk about makeup air a little bit later in the presentation. You got 3 types of blowers: outside, inline, and inside. The outside blower typically has the higher CFMs to 1,500, but internal will go to 1,200. Of the 3, I like the internal because it's easier to fix. You don't have a huge kind of mushroom shape or motor on the outside of your house. I'm not a big inline fan because you have to allow accessibility for service. I think internal will cover most of what people actually need. And really, what's the next question is, how much CFM do you need? Well, you see all these crazy equations on the internet, but they don't ask the essential question of how do you cook. Now, if you're just using the teapot like my mom, you really need only about 400 CFM. If you're doing high capacity cooking like walking, grilling, griddling, you would want more. And really, the difference between, say, a 600 CFM blower and a 1,200 CFM is only $180. So I would err on the side of caution, just getting something a little bit bigger, because the cost overall isn't that much. But the more you do the high capacity, the more you should get a better blower. Remember, anything over 400 CFM requires makeup air. Certainly in the state of Massachusetts, you won't get an occupancy permit without it, and we'll cover that in a second, right? Now, this is the part where everyone gets wrong. This is called the capture area, right? Over-the-range microwaves don't do it. Most hoods don't do it. You need a hood that covers the front burners that's 24 inches deep, right? At least, if you're putting against the wall, at least the size of the range and a height of 18 inches. The common misconception is that steam, smoke, VOCs are just exfiltrated right out of the hood. That's not the case. They're captured and then sent out. So you need a hood that can do that, right? So 24 inches deep, 18 high is good with the width of the range. And in the venting directions, we've had a lot of questions of, can I do this? Well, the more you put, the more you extend the venting run, the more elbows you use, reduce the static flow. So really the only thing I suggest is two ways, either straight up or straight back, right? Keep it efficient just like you would if you were in a restaurant. The more bends you do, the more you bend it down, the more elbows used, the less efficient it becomes. And again, I don't see this problem as much as I used to. Back in my day, people were using dryer vent kits for ducting, vinyl 4-inch. Really what you need is something galvanized steel, 8 or 10-inch round. Stick to those specs, or bigger if you cook a lot. This is a great picture. A lot of people are planning kitchens around windows. I think sinks go under windows well, but this is a perfect example of what you should do if you're putting your stove against a wall, which I really recommend. You got windows on either side. You get the tall hood, 30 to 36 inches over a professional range. This is what it looks like over an island. See the overlap of 3 inches, and over the side, it's a 54-inch hood over a 48-inch cooktop. I'm not fond of putting cooking in an island, but if you do, this is what you need to do to vent, right? Then you've got your window where you can put your sink, where you put your sink under the window, that's your most popular appliance, is actually your sink. This is another shot of an island of 42 over a 36-inch induction. So these are the vents to avoid, and this is a lot of what we sell. Downdrafts. If we say the capture is important, then downdraft is exactly opposite. You get a 4-inch vent. You're forcing the air down on a longer run with an elbow. It's not efficient. And again, if you're cooking on the front burners, you need to drag that smoke to that vent. This is not optimum. Certainly for new construction, I would certainly avoid a downdraft. It's certainly better than nothing, but that's not the standard for if you can do this properly. Over the range microwaves we talked about, it's 15 inches deep over a 23-inch powerful burner that you're cooking on. I would look to put a microwave somewhere else and put a vent in its place. Slide out hoods. I don't know the architects that are still using this. Very popular in the 80s. It's a glass visor that doesn't cover the burners. Uses the cabinets. If you see a slide out hood, just don't buy it. Wood hoods you can do, but not like this. If you're going to do a wood hood, just remember it's got to be 24 inches so you can get the proper amount of CFM. What they did is they made this in line with the cabinets, which are typically 12 to 14 inches deep. If you want to do it right, do it like this. See how that sticks out from the cabinets? Probably about 24 inches deep, covers the front burners. I'd imagine it's the right CFM. The way you buy a wood hood is a light filter control unit. The control unit covers the blowers. The blowers are about the same CFM as hoods. It's just basically cutting the guts out of a hood. You put that in with a liner, and that's how you make a wood or a tile hood. Ceiling blowers are supposed to be 4 feet over the cooking surface. Most people put them on cathedral ceilings thinking they'll work. They won't. I'm not sure of the capture area, but most of the applications like you see here, smoke's going to dissipate before it ever hits it. And then makeup air. And we've had some good questions on makeup air, and I've got a lot of good specs to show you later. Makeup air is when you going over 400 CFM, you need to make that air up. Now, a lot of you are in states that don't have makeup air laws like Massachusetts. I would recommend doing it because the air is going to be made up either way. So if you don't plan a fresh air return, which is defined through your HVAC system, or the law stipulate 10 feet away from the stove on the opposite side, so you're not going to breathe in the hood air. That makeup air, that air is going to be made up from your furnace, your basement, your garage. That's not really healthy air to breathe. So plan a makeup air return, even if you don't need to by law. Ventless is better, is certainly not optimum, and certainly not in this picture, because what happens is, especially over gas, is it recirculates that air and it blows it right back in your face where the slats are. if you have a bad venting situation, a couple things you should do is open your windows to get some fresh air in, cook on the back burners if you can. Use induction electric, because a lot of the things we talk about, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, VOCs are not produced by induction or electric, they're produced by gas. So converting to induction, which is not easy because you need more amperage, you need to rewire. It's about $3,500 for electrician and a plumber and a installer to install induction from gas, just so you know, because you're going from 12 amps to 30 to 50, depending on the induction range or cooktop. And then add an air cleaner. I don't know if it's a placebo or not, but a lot of them cover air to 0.1 of a micron. And if you need to go vent, let's do it with the triangular hood, because really the over the triangle, that flange there is where the air comes out on either side. So it's at least not blowing back to your face. A lot of them have got really deep, better carbon resin filters as well. So that's it for vetting. Let's talk about lighting and the dying art of lighting our kitchen properly. We do a webinar with Mark Tobin that you can catch on YouTube where we rate kitchens. And I looked at, you're going to see the most popular kitchens on House right now. And most of them aren't lit properly, right? And here's what you need to know. This is actually pretty well lit. Here's how to light a kitchen. There's task lighting, which people aren't using. And it's a shame, because the LED recess that you can buy now, when I sold it 15 years ago, it was like $250 a can, an actual fixture. Now you can buy them for $10, $15. They're pretty good, right? So there's no excuse not to. It's the least expensive in your budget lighting, right? So then you have accent, which highlights objects. It could be under cabinet lighting, could be over cabinet lighting. I'm going to show you a lot of different applications that I think you'll like. Then there's decorative, which is fixtures that personalize your white, gray, subway tile kitchen. And then ambient lights the ceiling, kind of like in your caveman time. The light that you can see on the ceiling creates a nice effect. A lot of people don't use ambient lighting. Here's a couple tips. Don't put the lights behind you, create shadow. Aim for 2,500 to 3,000 degrees Kelvin, because it's the yellower light that's more appealing. And then anywhere you can put under cabinet lighting, and it's super cheap to do, is a bonus. I'm going to show you different applications. This is how I look at this kitchen, right? You get the hood light, which is accent or task. You've got under cabinet lighting. You've got the fixture, which lights the ceiling, so it's decorative and ambient. And you get the task lighting, which is the recessed, right? Now, ambient lighting is the hardest. So the best way to do that is putting lights on top of the cabinets, and semi-flush do a nice job of lighting ceilings. Now let's look at this kitchen. Very little task lighting, but they do a great job of under cabinet lighting. Take a look under the cabinets. This is super inexpensive to do. Now, the other trend, which I find is really interesting, is a lot of people are putting lighting over these solid shelves. So it's really not going to light up to that shelf. And again, if we're talking going back to venting, you probably don't want to put a solid shelf between the range and the hood. Even when you buy a range, when you buy those shelves that come with the ranges, they still have slats in them to let the air through. That doesn't let the air into the hood. So I wouldn't recommend doing that. But you see a lot of this. Like, I think they're just using lights as a decoration, because it just doesn't work any other way. You're not lighting anything. Again, one of the more popular kitchens in the house, one of the most popular, and there's no task lighting in it. So just decorative. And it's just so you have lighting in the middle, but it's not on the sides. I'm assuming they don't put it under cabinet lighting either. Same thing here. Beautifully styled kitchen, different color tones, no task lighting. No task lighting. One of the popular kitchens, at least they did the vent right. See how the vent comes up from the cabinets, different shade, nice style, no lighting. And then this one, which actually has some task lighting. Again, shelves next to lights that they can't light past the shelf. They have a great opportunity to put decorative lighting in the arches there, under the cabinets there, but they didn't do that. Also, there's no ambient lighting because the light is just a down light only. So there's some missed opportunities in what I consider a really nice kitchen. I think this is the most popular kitchen on house, or certainly one of them. And all this lighting is shades, and this is a huge missed opportunity. Doesn't light the ceilings. There's no task lighting here anywhere. The only lights are the hood and those two shades. And that's too bad, because what they could have done, you see the tray ceiling? Take a look. Look at that. This is what they could have done. Put that light in there, combine that with putting lighting, here, and have a completely different effect. So if I had to sum this up, for hoods, CFM, remember, cover the front burners. That's 23 inches. Just vent straight up or straight back. And then use the right duct, which most of you will do. For lighting, just remember the 4 elements as best you can. I know ambient's the hardest. Put under cabinet lighting everywhere, and it is super cheap to light your kitchen well. So there's no excuse. So that's it from here. Next webinar is one of the favorites for our vendors, best and worst new appliances 2025. Everything here will be sent to you. If you want to download our free ventilation buyer's guide, it's got all this information. It's totally free. And with that, I will bring it back to you, Pat.
Cool. Thank you, Steve. Welcome back, Fran. So we can dive into let's dive into the questions we had from registration. First, if there's questions from everybody tuning in, use the Q&A tab next to the chat, and we can dive into those as well. Let's start out with, I cook a lot more than the previous owners and need to install an above island exhaust. Unfortunately, I can't move the cooktop to an area next to a wall for direct ducting. What would you suggest?
Well, for me, there's any number of things to do. I don't think, if you got out of this webinar, I have to redo my kitchen because I can't vent properly. I got an existing downdraft. That's not the impression I want to leave. There's the best way, which is putting a hood over it that covers the burners and 3 inches on either side. And then there's the next best, which is, the ceiling hoods. I don't particularly love, but they're certainly better than nothing. And then if you've got an existing downdraft, put another downdraft in, put in an induction cooktop, open some windows. Those are the 3 things I would do in an island. But
yeah,
wouldn't remodel unless you want to. But the gold standard is the hood.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to say too, really depends on what's already there. Installing an island hood just kind of on its own without doing a remodel can definitely be difficult to do. So if you already have something there, like a downdraft, that's definitely probably the best and easiest thing to do there. Installing a new island hood, again, not during a new construction or a remodel, that can be a tough install too at times, for sure.
Cool. Can you use a wall-mounted microwave for ventilation over a gas range?
Wall-mounted microwave? I mean,
I
think they mean over-the-range microwave. Mm-hmm. I love over-the-range microwaves, but they've been around for 35 years, and they don't cover the front burners, which have become increasingly powerful. And that's where you cook. So I wouldn't do it. I mean, I'm not a microwaver anyway. But I'd certainly, if you have a choice, opt for a hood and then put a microwave somewhere else.
Yeah, agreed. And, technically you can, but it's not going to do the best job for sure. Now, if the other thing is if you're doing like a professional range with something more powerful, then you definitely do not and really can't do it by code and by the BTUs of those kind of more powerful professional ranges. So it's possible to do, but yeah, it's definitely not going to do the best job there.
Which type hood is best, vented to the outside or through an internal filter that vents to the kitchen?
Venting to the outside is way better.
Yeah.
No question.
Yeah, cool. I have a hood, then it vents out over my attached office. Yeah, my office smells like dinner. What's going on? Is it a problem with the ducting not being sealed properly? Why does it smell?
Where's the vent going? I mean,
Yeah.
you know, there was this book I read years ago that people were getting sick because the lab that was conducting experiments vented into the office. So I would check the vent without question.
Yeah.
First of all, it could be any number of things. It could be a shallow vent. They're cooking. They're grilling, griddling, or walking on a vent. Although in an office, I can't see them doing that. And just the smoke and grease is left over and just bleeding into that space. But I got to believe there's something wrong with the venting.
Yeah.
Like it's like there's maybe no exit to it, right? That it just stops over the office. Like they didn't continue the vent. I've seen that happen.
So what size hood would be optimal for a 36 induction cooktop?
It depends. If you're against wall, 36 is fine. I still think 42 over 36 would be good if you're putting it in an island. You don't need as much CFM as you do with gas. And induction and electric are cleaner than gas as well.
Cool. Let's take a question from the live Q&A here. So it's a good question to dive into. Should the ducts be cleaned periodically for grease the way that closed dryer ducts should be? If so, how often?
I think what you need to do is I think you need to clean the baffles. You need to clean the filters. I don't remember ever cleaning my duct. I don't remember cleaning it, but I have cleaned I just throw the filters into my dishwasher every now and again, and that seems to work.
Yeah, and if you have definitely for those kind of metal baffle filters, those are designed to trap the grease there, really, and then those should be cleaned. If you have one that maybe has mesh filters, those, really can't be cleaned. They more so need to be replaced with the mesh filters. But really, I'd say the vast majority of the newer hoods have some sort of metal baffle filters now, which is easier to clean and better to trap that grease.
Cool. Let's take another one there. I was told you should turn the hood on sometime before you start cooking and leave it running after. Does that sound right?
Yeah, absolutely. You turn it on, 10 minutes before, 5-10 minutes before you start cooking, and that helps kind of get that air circulation going. This way, when you start cooking and have those odors, grease, anything like that, it's doing a better job capturing that. And then, just leaving it on a few minutes afterwards as well to kind of just capture any of that residual smoke, heat, things like that.
I've always done that. Now I know why.
See, I was learning something in these webinars.
Let's go makeup air questions. Do you sell powered makeup air systems that are tied to the powered vent hood and turn on when the vent hood turns on?
We have the Brones, but there's some really good ones to tie in your HVAC. I think it's funny, I can't see the questions. I don't know why, but I put a list of all the various makeup air units that you can buy. From us, it's just the basics, but you can really go elaborate. I mean, you can get makeup air that will air condition and heat. from any number of systems right through your HVAC. We just carry the Brones, right? Those are just the electronic dampers that open when you're putting it on the other side, right? When you're putting it
Exactly. Yeah, and really they'll all should have something at least like that. So basically there's like a small wire that kind of runs from the inside of the hood down to the makeup air damper kit. And when that hood pops on, it kind of sends that signal, and then that damper just automatically opens and then closes when the hood turns off. So really you should definitely have something that's automatic. Kind of, I would imagine probably needs to be by code for sure.
Cool. Let's go back to how to get an HOA to approve ventilation. Purchased a townhome sight unseen. Did not know the kitchen had no exterior ventilation.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see that as being a problem for an HOA unless you're in a historical area. Like I know certain areas like Beacon Hill don't allow any extrusions outside their brick buildings. I find it, but for a house, I find it really hard that an HOA would block you from venting. You may have to have a certain style outside, maybe you have to paint it. I don't know, but I don't see that being a problem. I think you still have to go through the municipality and the HOA, but I don't see that as an issue. I mean, have you heard that? I have never heard that.
Never run into that. Yeah, I mean, definitely like townhomes or condos, maybe like you said, a high rise is certainly different, but an individual home, no, I haven't seen that. I mean, we don't run into that maybe as much around here versus some other areas, but yeah, nothing that I've ever come across. Obviously worst case, certainly recirculating, that's a last case if you had to do that where you don't have to put any holes in the wall or anything like that. But yeah, certainly exterior ventilation, much, much better.
Cool. How does ventilation for an induction cooktop differ from a gas Ranger cooktop?
Yeah, like you said before, Steve, induction is just so much cleaner, way more efficient, doesn't need as much power. You don't have any of the anything from the flames and the fire or anything like that. And the difference, with induction, we always say it's like 90% efficient. Really, all that heat's going right to the pan. Whereas in gas, you're really wasting away a lot of that flame to the outside of the pan. So you really have a lot more to vent out with all, just everything that's associated with that. So much, much cleaner and less needed. Of course, it always depends on how you cook and what type of things you cook. If you do high heat cooking, wok cooking, things like that, you certainly still want some powerful ventilation there too.
Yeah, I mean, again, if you're doing all that stuff with induction, you need a good vent, but you don't get any compounds released in electric or induction. Induction's 90% gas, is 60%. When you see that gas flame, a lot of that is diffused through the sides. So technically you should have more ventilation for gas than you do induction.
Okay, next up. How do you overcome what the contractor wants versus what the manufacturer is asking as far as CFM? We have an ongoing battle.
An ongoing battle with your contractor? Again, I mean, ventilation, first of all, I would think I'm not sure if you got a less blower, would the I don't think an inspector would care, would they, or would they even know? But really, it depends on how you cook. I don't think it sounds like a bad contractor relationship. I don't think a contractor, if they're venting properly, should really care what blower you pick. I mean, the venting is going to be the same. It's 8-10 inch round, really, for most. I don't see what the fight is. Maybe you should just tell them what you want.
Yeah, it could be something maybe with a makeup air kit that the contractor is trying not to do anything with a makeup air system, perhaps. But, really depends, too, kind of on what that range requires, too, to some degree. If the range is calling for a certain minimum, you really need to be at least there for sure.
I think you hit on it, though, because makeup air is so simple to put in. I mean, you're putting in an HVAC anyway, but after the fact becomes much harder. you'd have to almost install like another. We have to almost install another unit now, right? And then
Yeah.
make that vent go to the hood.
You kind of cut into the existing ductwork a little bit there.
Or you'd have to tee it off, but who knows if that's
Exactly.
Next up, what's the acceptable range of inches off the counter? Must a hood be above an induction cooktop?
28 to 36, depending on what the specs of that particular manufacturer says, but it's typically 28 to 36.
How well can adequate ventilation for a gas range mitigate indoor pollution?
Almost all of it. Almost all. Putting it over and if you're getting the right capture, the right CFM, you're venting almost all of it. I think I saw, the gas company trying to sell gas by saying you can get rid of 98%. So I think you can get rid of almost all of it.
Okay. Can you get a powerful blower that doesn't make a tremendous amount of noise?
No.
Yeah.
The reason is you would think an outside blower would be quieter, but you're still going to hear the rush of the air through the duct.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't make that mitigating factor in the purchase.
No, and then whatever you save on noise with like an external blower, you kind of make up for that in service and things down the line where, you have a big box on the outside of the home. That noise is going to be somewhere regardless on the outside. And then if you do ever need service, those can be a lot more difficult too. So
I don't see reviews of vent-to-hood products. Maybe another product has a feature similar to this that you can speak to when the product is rated at 600 CFM, for example, but they say it effectively works like 900 CFM. Should that be taken into account when sizing?
Oh, the magic lung. We haven't sold those in a while. I love Vent-A-Hood. I think, we talked about cleaning the blowers. I don't know if you know this, Fran, but they were detachable at least at one time. The problem with Vent-A-Hood, first of all, the 600, 900 thing, which they always talk about, I've never seen any studies on that. But the problem with Vent-A-Hood is it's really hard to order, and it's really hard to vent. Once you get to two blowers, you need because the venting comes from two different holes with two different blowers. You need kind of like a kit that would what do they call that? Jesus, it's been a while. Kind of like a vent, it's a piece of metal that covers both blowers, and then it goes up to an 8-inch round. So it's difficult to order, difficult to install, and the styling is a little bit off. But I like the Magic Lung. Supposedly, the main thing is when you have a fire, it blows the fire back down to the range rather than letting it go up through the duct. But how many of those have you seen? So
yeah, and no filters. That's kind of the deal with them too. Like no filters.
Yeah, it's no filters, so you have to. Oh, so it's still that way. So you still have to. Yeah. To clean it, you got to detach the blower and then clean it out the sink. We haven't sold those in years.
Mm-mm.
Question: I will have a 63-inch wide range. How wide should the inset ventilator be?
Well, that's either probably going to be a Lacanche, a La Cornue, or that other range, L'Atelier maybe. I would say if you're making a custom 65, you could do anything is going to be. I would say it depends where it is. If it's an island, you want 3 inches overhang on either side. If it's against a wall, I'd make it 65 inches. Everything you're doing is custom anyway, so the blower is going to be custom as well.
To use an existing roof vent in a new layout, are two 90-degree turns in the ductwork all right?
No. Again, you can do it. It's not optimum. It's kind of like, taking a straw, bending it 2 ways and trying to drink that soda. It's the same type of thing. Air doesn't move very well kind of like through the vent. So the more bends you have, and if you're doing two, the static flow is going to be much less when you get to the exit point. I wouldn't do it, but
It's like they said, like every turn is like the equivalent of adding 7 feet to your duct run. So it definitely makes it much less efficient than it should be.
Can I use a Yale recirculating vent over an induction range rather than the vented model?
you can make anything ventless. It just doesn't. It's just not as doesn't work as effectively as moving the air outside your house. It's certainly better than nothing. In induction, at least you don't get, at least you don't have the dirty air you do with gas. So.
Mm-hmm.
How well do the in-unit ventilation systems work on cooktops? I think this is like a down.
So, yeah, like a downdraft cooktop with the vent built into the cooktop. There's not a ton of those around anymore, and they just really don't do a great job because you're really working against gravity. You have kind of like your pot up here or whatever you're cooking on, and the smoke's going this way where your vent is way down here, and it's really hard to pull that in and do a really effective job there.
Coming soon, Fran. You were in a KBIZ show, is brand new in unit vents like the old Gen Airs. There's a company out of Europe called Borax, I think, or Bora, right? That's I think making them for KitchenAid, and I think Fisher Big-Hill has one under their own brand as well. But I think it's a Bora, so they're going to become popular again. It's just, I think it's last resort stuff. It's better than nothing, but certainly not optimum, especially if you're going to cook a lot.
Yeah, at least with a downdraft behind it, you kind of have some height there that's coming up, where these are kind of straight right on the countertop.
Cool. Question: how do you handle makeup air in a hot, steamy southern U.S. environment?
Oh, that's a great question. I went to school in New Orleans, and it is, you think hot and steamy, 90. It's one of the only places in the world where it rains and it still is hot after it. Super hot. And when you're moving all that air out and making it up, you're getting super hot air back and steamy air back in your house. But there are makeup air units. I think there should be a slide after that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I have it up now, Steve.
Oh, I'm sorry. I can't see it for whatever reason. That will cool the air, that will condition the air, either heating or cooling. So you have the ability to get something that won't send this piping hot air back in your house. So great question.
Cool. How far from the front edge of the hood beyond the front edge of your range? How do you avoid hitting your head?
Yeah, it should be 24 inches. Really, 24 inches deep is kind of what it should be. They have some that are, and really, I'd say first off, like at 24 inches, and if you're 30 inches above, depending on exactly how high you're mounting it, shouldn't really have that issue with kind of hitting your head there. They make some more professional style hoods that come out a little bit deeper, like 27 inches deep. Those certainly, that extra 3 inches could cause that, depending on how tall you are. But at standard 24 inches and mounting it above 30, yeah, you shouldn't have that issue. Yeah,
it's 85 inches tall if it's installed at the minimum. So
yeah.
Okay. What is the wait time for thermidor ventilation when a new unit is purchased? What's the wait time for getting parts in warranty and out of warranty?
Well, that's, getting products and parts is an ever evolving situation. Given the fact that, we're not sure what the tariff situation is. A lot of parts come from China. So it's always evolving. Let's put it that way. It depends on when you buy it. If you bought it, if you're, we always recommend, buying from a dealer that's got a warehouse that can store it for you, because I really think in the back half of the year, and this goes for just about everything, you're going to see some supply chain issues. Probably not the same as COVID, But until people figure out what the best course for them is in terms of factories, I think they're taking a wait and see approach. And that wait and see approach means not making things. So I think the back half of the year, you're going to find a problem with almost anything. So really, the answer to that question is it really depends.
Cool. Question: why don't more designers oversize the hood width by 6 inches wider than the total cooking surface for the capture of cooking gases?
Because it doesn't look as good. I mean, I think against a wall you don't need to, because the wall will support that. But in an island, I think they should. But against the wall, I don't think it's necessary.
Might lose a little bit more cabinet space too. Small reason why, but
yeah, it could be.
Does an induction cooktop require different venting than an electric cooktop?
No, it's the same power source. I think induction is just more efficient.
Cool. Okay. The thermostat in our small apartment controls the heat for all of 4 apartments in our building, so we can't use our oven when the heat is on. Would a good vent hood help?
That's a really interesting question. And the answer is probably not, because I don't see you going out and buying like a 1500 CFM and installing that. And even if you could, the most effective appliance I've ever seen was an attic fan, way back in the day, where you just flip a switch and all the hot air that's on the ceiling just gets exfiltrated out of your house in like a blink of an eye. I like where you're going on this. I just don't think you're getting the right amount of CFM to really do much. It certainly might help, but I don't know to what extent. Good idea, though.
Can you discuss makeup air options for CFM greater than 400 CFM? Well,
again, I think we've talked about this, but there's endless amounts of systems that you can put in with your HVAC. I don't know. Do you have that? I think I came up with a graph for that too. There's really, you can do basic fresh air return. You can do it so it's heated, so air conditioned, heated and air conditioned. You could do almost anything for new. Or if you have to retrofit it, you would have to do something like putting a hole and then putting an automatic damper towards that. But really, I was really surprised when I did some research of how much stuff there is to help you get a fresh air return. Maybe it's because I get the feeling that it's in the law of a lot of different states at this point.
Cool. Okay, that's it for all of our registration questions. You can jump back to the live Q&A for about 10 minutes left, guys. Let's go with what diameter did you say the ducts should be?
We got to read the specifications, but typically it's 8 or 10 inch round for the better hoods. Typically.
Yeah, higher powered kind of pro hoods. You're looking at 10 inches a lot of times. Some of those can be 8, but yeah, that's really most of them.
We had a cleaning question. This question is more specific for the exterior blower fan. How often should you clean the outside blower fan?
Again, I think cleaning is on the inside. I don't know. I mean, we in our house, we did have a rooftop blower. I don't remember when getting on the roof to clean it.
No. Then you want to make sure there's nothing blocking it or really anything like that.
Birds' nests, type of stuff.
Yeah.
If you have any more questions for our panel here, use the Q&A, and we can get to them in the next few minutes here. This question is a follow-up to earlier. So the question is, my question was answered first. I forgot to mention that the existing cooktop is a 30-inch radiant with no downdraft. Has been that way for 18 years. The joists above the ceiling run correctly to duct between them to the outside. Is that best?
Yeah, in the island application.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's certainly the most effective for sure. Again, you really probably are going to have to get more of an HVAC person in there to see the feasibility of it, to make sure that that works with kind of not really having to rip apart too much of, the ceiling and whatever may be above there, but that's certainly the most effective.
What do they say? I'm sorry, I don't.
They have a cooktop in an island with no ventilation at all right now, and looking to add ventilation to it.
Yeah, well, they're going to have to put a ducting run in, or I'm not sure recirculating. I'm sure there are recirculating island hoods, but those are your two options, really. Or I mean, you're not gonna you're probably not gonna put a downdraft in now. I wouldn't think. But again, it depends on the application of what you have in your house. But I would say putting a ducting run for a hood is the best option if you're willing to do that.
Next, we have a question about lighting. Steve, so would you ever consider, this is related to one of the last images you shared in the lighting section. Would you ever consider installing LED strips above the upper cabinets?
Yes. Yes, I would. I would put, I got to tell you, something we did the grilling. When was that? A couple months ago. And I showed under cabinet lighting. One of my friends is a developer. We're going over lights. People are lighting stairs underneath the stairs. Yes, I'd put it anywhere. It's so inexpensive to do, and it's much higher output, and it's much cheaper. LED is come down from we used to, it started in Boston here. They had color kinetics, and it would cost a fortune to do this stuff. Now it's so cheap. Why wouldn't you? You just put it on a different switch. I would light the top. I'd light the bottom, put it on separate switches. But just think about that. You can light the ceiling. You can light the floor. You can leave it on so, no one's tripping over themselves, to get to a drink of water. It's great accent lighting. You put it under the cabinet. It's great task lighting. Yeah, I would definitely do that. And you don't see any of it, right? That, a few recessed cans, some nice pendants, and you're good to go. And it's so super cheap to do.
Let's go to this question. Who should I turn to for venting and makeup air issues in our existing kitchen?
Yeah, really, there should be a contractor, maybe like an HVAC person.
HVAC person, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go. How do you decide when to fix a vent hood versus replace it? Have a Thermador professional vent hood that's 20 years old. It's starting to rattle. Not sure what's up.
Again, we always, we charge to send a roller truck and get a good tech out there, and then we give half the call back if it's unrepairable. I don't think the Thermador. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I've been here for 40 years, but I've been off the sales for about 18 to 20 of them. I don't think the Thermador has changed in all that time. I mean, I don't know how long you've been here, Fran, but I think the part should be available for them. It shouldn't be that expensive to fix.
Yeah, it could be a simple thing too. If it's just something that's rattling or loose, maybe it could be a simple fix. Yeah, it depends on what it is. It may be worth kind of checking that out first. Yeah.
Cool. Is 400 CFM enough for a 30-inch induction range? Any options for hoods that will allow installation without makeup air?
Yeah, anything under 400. And then you've got some hoods that that you can make 400 CFM, right?
Correct. With them, yeah. So like our Yale hoods too, you can kind of go from 600, convert them down to under 400 so that they would pass that code. Technically, really, they shouldn't go back up to that 600 CFM. So that's something you want to be aware of too. So really, once you reduce them down, they're not really able to go back up to that 600.
Yeah, but 400 should be okay for an induction. range. Should be, depending on what you cook.
Let's go to, in the middle of a kitchen update, unfortunately, the induction cooktop is in the island with no option to move it. Thus, we're forced to choose a downdraft vent. Knowing your thoughts on the subject, is it possible to give me your best recommendation?
Well, again, I think I said this first, is I'm not here to tell you got to remodel. Certainly it's an expensive, mind-sucking process that I've been through twice. So if down venting is the best you can do, that's what you do, right? I mean, the better thing would be get a hood, but then you got to put venting and install venting, and that's another set of madness. And you don't have to. If you're going to down vent, induction's certainly better than gas. Just open up some windows. Cook in the back burners if you can, because it's not as inconvenient. It's like gas has got less powerful burners in the back, but you can make the induction burner. The inductions. Couldn't you make that? Can you do the power boost so it's in back in the induction, or is that just in the front?
It would depend. It depends on the cooktop, but you should be able to. Yeah, depending on how the cooktop's configured.
Yeah, and you get really good power in the back, which you don't in the gas typically. So it's better than nothing, and it beats remodeling. So
we have a few minutes. I think there's 3 more to get. That would be good to get to. Let's go with. We get this question sometimes. Is a steam oven typically vented?
No.
Yeah.
Let's go to tips for avoiding problems in adding a vent through the ceiling for replacing a recirculating vent.
Hire the right people.
Yeah.
Download the vent buying guide, hand it to them, and make sure they check reviews of whether they can do the job or not. Really, it comes down to people.
All right, 2 more. I fibbed a little bit. What would you suggest for task lighting below a 9-foot ceiling? Are recessed cans too high above the workspace?
I don't think at 9 feet they are. I don't think so. I mean, I've been out of the game for a while, for almost 6 years, but I think recess is fine. Recessed, and then under cabinet everywhere. Your hood's going to cover it. Then you get some decorative fixtures. I think it's fine. 9 feet. It's not. You're not talking about cathedral ceilings. I mean, 9 feet is a typical ceiling, isn't it? Pretty much. I think I would know.
All right, last one here. I think Melissa teed us up for a great question. I think to sign off with. Do you offer on-site consults? Need help improving existing ventilation and makeup air?
I'll tell you what we do. It's funny. We do consults on deliveries, but not on vent systems. You can I think there's 3 things you can do with us that we can do for you. A, you can come in the store and give pictures. B, you can FaceTime. And C, you can make a phone call.
Yeah, and then just like deeper as far as like the installation and improving, like that's something you definitely want to kind of, again, HVAC contractor, whoever you're working with there, because every home is so specific, they would definitely be the right people there. But as far as like talking about what's out there for ventilation, how a makeup air system works, absolutely, that's something that we help with.
We can even, as long as the vent's right, we can even install it for you. What we can't do is rerun the ducting and the electrical for you. We can do everything else.
Cool. I think that will do it for today. Like we said earlier, we will be sharing this presentation and the recording with everybody, along with a link to our ventilation buying guide. Like Steve mentioned, we'll be posting this on YouTube, so you can check back there later. And feel free when you get the email follow-up to let us know how we can help with any of your projects. So with that, I think, any final words, Steve and Fran?
Don't forget to vent. I mean, don't forget to light too. I mean, I've got no stake in whether you light, we don't sell it anymore, but Jesus, man. I mean, it's so inexpensive to do right, and make sure you vent, because especially if you're getting the gas, getting these gas pros, and even induction if you're cooking a lot. I think it really matters, especially in new construction where all that stuff stays in your house. Vent properly. I mean, it's as important as the label you're going to buy and put in your house. I really believe that.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you all taking time to spend with us today, and talk to you later. Bye.